Welcome to Higher Ground's Live 911 Tech Talk with our special guest, Jamie Hudson. He's from the Elk Grove Police Department's Real-Time Information Center. My name is Jake White from Higher Ground, a software manufacturer that's been in the business of providing innovative solutions since 1973. And we are the company that created the Live 911 technology that live streams emergency calls to real-time crime centers, patrol officers in the field, drone as first responder programs, and even fire departments. But today's topic about real-time crime centers has generated a lot of interest, and we've received the most attendees so far in our series of webinars. So I'm glad this topic really resonates with all of you. But before we dive in, I just want to take time to thank you for attending. And also, I'm sure many of you have questions about today's topic. And so please, on that QA tab, feel free to put in anything that you'd like to discuss or any questions you have for Jamie throughout the presentation, and we'll make sure that we take the time to get to those. And also, just as a reminder, I'm going to email you a recording of this session so that you may share that with any colleagues that perhaps was unable to attend today. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker today, Jamie Hudson, with over 30 years of experience in the public safety, law enforcement, and emergency management field. He started his career as a dispatch training instructor and then dispatch supervisor, and is now the manager of the Real-Time Information Center at the Elk Grove Police Department and also directs their EOC. The past president of the National Real-Time Crime Center Association, Chris Henningsen, referred to him in an email as the true founder of real-time policing. So we're excited to hear his insights and learn from his experiences in this field. Well, Jamie, good to see you again, and thank you so much for participating in our Tech Talk today.
Yeah, good to see you too, Jake, and no problem at all. Hello, everybody, and I hope that you get something out of this. And like Jake said, if you have questions, feel free to ask those.
Well, I was thinking before we get into the details about the Elk Grove Police Department, I was thinking it may be a good place to start would be a discussion about that National Real-Time Crime Center Association. I know you've been involved from the beginning of its founding as an inaugural board of director member, and that you are presently serving as the vice president of administration for the group. So maybe you could share with us a little bit about the NRTCCA and the services it provides.
Sure. Yeah. So when I was tasked with standing up a real-time center, there wasn't kind of a central repository of information. There was really no central point of contact to get in touch with other real-time centers and find out their experiences. So a group of us from around the country found each other and decided that we should start this association. And that's what we did. And honestly, it has done exactly what we were hoping it would do. It kind of marries technology partners with those who are seeking technology solutions and in the real-time center space. And it gives us a place, kind of a one-stop shop, to where we don't have to wonder who to contact from that point forward. So think of it as an advocacy group on behalf of law enforcement agencies with technology partners. Think of it as an advocacy group on behalf of technology partners for law enforcement space as well. So we really want to serve both ends of that to ensure that the partnerships are just that, partnerships, and not necessarily just a customer consumer type of relationship.
Right. Good. I'll put their contact information or their website URL on the closing slides with our contact information at the end of the webinars as well. So with this philosophy of real-time policing, how did that kind of begin, and how has it evolved, or this trend advanced?
Yeah. So even though Chris said that about me, this started many years before I was in this game in the real-time world. So it started out on the East Coast, and really the origins of it were after September 11th. And so In the state of New York, they started what is today known as the Real-Time Crime Center, and it kind of grew from there and really grew from east to west. We are just catching on now in numbers on the West Coast, but before that, we did have some pioneers out here as well. So ultimately, it's about 20 years in the making now, 15, 20 years, and we keep progressing. And so that's, I think, the tricky part for any agency that goes into this space is, once you build a real-time center, once you have a department philosophy that drives the efficiency of that center and what it does, are you going to be an agency that sits back and rests on that and allows it to operate efficiently, or are you going to be an agency that is always in search of progressive new ways, leading edge ways to be more efficient in policing? So Elk Grove, we are that latter. We like to be progressive. We like to test boundaries ethically with
Yeah.
new technology to see kind of where we can go with that.
And you call the real-time information center. I know there's also real-time crime centers, different names, but do you have any type of statistics as to maybe the number of those type of operations or centers across America now?
Yep, there's a couple hundred across the country, and again, they're growing. So at any given time, there's a dozen or more being physically built as we speak. And then there's also a lot of agencies around the country that operate with a real-time policing philosophy and don't have a physical infrastructure built. So they're still incorporating a lot of these technology solutions to help aid in the efficient response to calls for service and kind of using that philosophy. So can't count those necessarily because they're probably in the several hundreds that have someone that is assigned to do work similar to what a real-time center would be doing as well.
Mm-hmm. When I had an opportunity to speak with the Mesa Police Department's Real-Time Crime Center, there's Sergeant Matt Kuntz says, I was interviewing him for a case study that's on the Live911 website, and he said, creating a fully integrated real-time crime center is not for the faint of heart. And I know 4.5 years ago, you established, you and your team, the Elk Grove's Real-Time Crime Center, and it became the first functioning center in California. I'm sure many of the attendees that are watching now, and it's a pretty broad question, but can you kind of tell us how you accomplished that task, or if you have any best practices to share for those attending who are interested in setting up their own center?
Yep. And just a point of clarification, we weren't the first in California. So there were a couple that were running already, and we actually used them as some example of what we would build to look like. So to give some credit to Chino, Sacramento, and Fresno, they did have those before us as well. But with that said, what we learned very quickly was that each crime center had to be built essentially custom for each agency. So you can't take a center and the philosophy of a center and apply it to every single agency. And what that did for us was, well, for me, was confuse me. So it was definitely an uphill battle figuring out what do we do with this. Now, what you see in the industry a lot of times is for a chief, deputy chief, sheriff, undersheriff to task, a sergeant, lieutenant, or professional staff manager with build me a crime center. And they go right from there. And typically it's not build me a crime center and here's a few $1 million behind that. It's usually build me a crime center and good luck on finding any money. And so I was lucky enough to receive a crime center. Our agency, our IT manager at our agency ultimately built this crime center, the information center, and handed me the keys to the center, which made that piece a lot easier for what we had to climb that hill. But now we have many, to look at, and many examples. And that's the beauty of what I found in crime centers is that, in the industry, we typically, in law enforcement, we typically say, I'm at this agency or we're that agency. There are agencies that use every platform available in the technology space relative to real-time centers somewhere in this country. And we, as the National Real-Time Crime Center Association, can point people to those centers. And so we're not, as an association, certainly not here to say, here's what we recommend you go with. That would never be the case. But what we can say is, here's an agency that's successfully using that product that you mentioned or that you haven't looked at yet, and you should do that. So it's a wild ride for anybody that needs to build one of these, and it's getting a little more refined, but it was certainly an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and you mentioned funding. I was wondering, are there grants available or other innovative ways you've seen people fund their center?
There are now there's grants, state specific grants. So each state has various grant allotments and programs each year. California just had the BSCC Organized Retail Theft Grant, which was over $240 million worth of money that was handed out to dozens of agencies. And many of those are building real-time centers associated with that awarded money. There are grants that we use in Elk Grove, what I would call creatively, to staff our center. And so we have a grant for vehicle theft recovery, and it's a county-wide grant. We use that grant money instead of putting 10 officers on the street to hope to find a stolen car. We put one operator inside the real-time center, and we allow our license plate reader network to find the stolen car. And then that operator finds it on live cameras, directs the officers to it, and we make the recovery and the arrest. And so statistically, we have more recoveries using less bodies, using the same grant money. And finally, we used Office of Traffic Safety grant money to buy a video analytics product as well. So it really speaks to organizational philosophy in use of funds, and there are a lot of traditional ways we do things in law enforcement. I would say that I would challenge every agency to be open to a paradigm shift and look at, if you always spend this money on this product or this person or this thing, look at, can that be spent differently in order to multiply what we can do in an efficient response.
And you mentioned staffing. Let's hear a little bit about your center or the community Elk Grove serves, and how are you staffed?
Yeah, so Elk Grove, what we chose, and this was a choice by our prior chief who has since retired. He chose to staff our center with professional staff, non-sworn staff. That wasn't necessarily the model that was across the country. And when I asked him why he made that decision, he was relatively emphatic about the idea that he believed that we, as an agency in a real-time center, needed stability in staffing. And so in the professional staff world, we typically don't rotate around jobs. And so we're not in a job for 2 or 3 years and then rotate to a new specialty assignment. Where in the sworn world, many of the jobs are rotational jobs. And so you might have an officer assigned as an operator, and then that officer may promote 1 year after starting and move out onto the street. You might have a lieutenant that's assigned to run the center, and that lieutenant promotes, or that lieutenant is assigned to a new specialty assignment. And we've been living that life in law enforcement for many, many years. So in our experience, it's worked out very well. We have a staff of 6 now, a manager, 2 analysts, 2 specialists that focus on communications and intelligence, and then an operator that's full-time as an RTIC operator. And then we do have a specialty assignment for a CSO, which is a non-sworn and unarmed civilian position. And we have that for a 3-year specialty assignment to come in as an operator as well. And so that's the way we run our ship. But with that said, there are very successful models that are all sworn. Fort Worth, Texas is an example of that. There are very successful models that are partially sworn, partially non-sworn. And so, again, it really depends on the agency and what that philosophy of that agency supports and really what they're looking for in the long run.
Great. Thank you. Hey, I see a couple of people raising their hands. I just wanted to let you know, because we have so many attendees, we're just doing Q&A today. If you can, right there on that Q&A tab, please just, there you go. Just type in your questions and we'll make sure we get to it. let's just do this right now. Deetra is asking, does your staff go to court regarding the video they see?
So to answer that, our staff can go to court regarding the video that they see. We have not had to. What we've chosen to do in our real-time center is, and again, this is a divergence from some others. We write no reports in our real-time center. What we do is we provide potential video evidence to officers or detectives investigating a case. They view that video evidence or potential evidence. If they determine that it's evidentiary, then they upload it as evidence and they articulate why it's evidence in their report. So oftentimes our operators or our employees who are operating will be interviewed by detectives in the cases, but we have not had to go and testify in court yet. And honestly, that's a huge win for us because, as everyone on this call knows, court eats up every bit of staffing that you might have sometimes. And so that was one of our goals, was not to have to do that. So far, so good for us. But again, other real-time centers take reports and it works fine there. So each one kind of has a different nuance.
Great. And what kind of, let's talk about technology stack, like what kind of platforms or what kind of, applications are you using in your center to optimize operations?
So we have a video management system in the Elk Grove Police Department. We own the traffic camera system around the city, and that is a little bit different from a lot of cities that their traffic management or traffic engineering staff kind of owns that network, and then the police piggyback off of that. And you'll see some rights to use that, a little bit limited in those cities that operate that way. We have our own network. We use a Vigilon. We have had a Vigilon as a citywide product for many years. There are several competitors out there that are equally good. And so that's the stack we use. We tell people all the time that that's one of the most important things that you can have if you can have it, right? And if you can access it. We use license plate reader technology. We went from mostly a mobile license plate reader deployment on cars to completely static deployment. All of our license plate readers are deployed pole-mounted, fixed location license plate readers, and they're prolific throughout the city. So when we have folks do site visits and they ask us, what's the most important thing you could have if you had to pick one technology? And we answer every time with license plate readers throughout the city. And that's because you don't have to rely on the real-time center in order to benefit from having those in your city. Dispatchers use them very well. Officers use them very well. Real-time centers do. So aside from license plate readers and video management or camera systems, we use a variety of intelligence systems and a variety of data aggregation or mapping systems. In Elk Grove, we use Flock Safety for our data aggregation mapping as well as our license plate reader system. There are valued competitors out there that do the same thing. Motorola, Fusus, Genetec, GeoShield Spatialytics, people like that. But that, in a nutshell, data aggregation mapping system, kind of a single pane of glass, one-stop shop for accessing cameras, accessing intelligence points, data points that you as an agency may upload yourselves. We use video analytics products that help us condense a video, filter that video, and save just a ton of time on reviewing video. So very quickly explained, we could take 12 hours of video with this analytics product through BriefCam. We can basically condense it down to several minutes and then filter out, we're looking for a red car and only a red four-door car, and it takes it down more. So 12 hours of video turns into a couple minutes of video with only red cars, and helps us save a ton of time investigatively. Web intelligence, web investigation platforms, first two, Cobwebs, those are in use in our center. And we kind of go on and on from there. We use Clearview AI for facial recognition and have written some policy around that to add to our department policy so that it was new for us, and that kind of gives us that guideline to follow.
Great, thanks. And I know, and thank you. I know you've incorporated Live 911 into your RTIC. How has that impacted your operations?
So we weren't sure how that was going to go. Coming from, for those who don't know that are on this webinar, my first 27, almost 28 years were in the 911 world. And when I heard there was a technology that wanted other people to listen to my 911 call while I was taking it, I thought it's the worst idea in the world. Just because nobody wants more people to hear what they're doing in real time. So what we did was we chose to incorporate Live 911 into our real-time center. We don't push it out to the cars on the street. I'm not here to argue one way or the other on that. It just wasn't in my domain to argue either way. And so for me, I wanted to see, does it benefit a real-time center in our calls for service? So we brought it in, and what we did was we committed to our dispatch staff and to our dispatch supervisors and manager that our job is to use intelligence, not to critique intelligence. And so when we hear calls, we don't ever critique the dispatcher taking the call. We never look at, we don't go in there and ask them later, hey, why'd you do this? Or why'd you say that? It's not our job, not our business. And honestly, we don't have the energy for that. So having said that, that's a commitment that you have to keep if you make that, because now those dispatchers, the job's already hard enough. They don't need to worry, are people critiquing what I'm doing as we're doing it? So with all of that aside, it has changed how we operate as a real-time center. And honestly, it's helped us capture suspects in calls for service much quicker. So imagine our dispatchers are taking a shooting call, and we in the real-time center hear the address and say we get a vehicle description or a license plate. That in that moment, before the call for service is created, we're able to access our camera network and start to try to find that vehicle. We're also simultaneously able to upload that vehicle into a local hot list in our license plate reader system, which then, as we're responding to the call, inevitably it'll likely hit one of our LPRs as it tries to leave the scene. And that directs us that much more pinpointed. To steal a phrase from Cobb County Police in Georgia, we like to say that it allows us to be to precision police, right? So now we can find the white four-door car that we know is involved instead of all the white four-door calls that we think might be involved. And then also at the same time that we're getting that call, drone as a first responder program is able to launch, remote pilot able to launch a drone and respond out towards that call for service as well. So we have been successful in having eyes on suspects and suspect vehicles before the call for service was created in the CAD system. And that's what that technology is allowing us to do. And that's a real world case, right? It's not a vendor telling you this is what it could do for you. It did it for us. And that's something that, and continues to do that for us. So the technology of feeding live 911 calls into a real-time center that has access to cameras, license plate reader, hot lists, and if you have a drone as a first responder program or a starting one, that as well, it's invaluable.
Great, thank you. I got another question from Anita about is your center operating 24/7? And I just have a follow-up question. I wondered what type of if you have any estimate as to the expense of what that budget would be to have a 24/7 center.
I do. So we do not operate 24/7. We operate Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then with that overtime that I mentioned earlier from the grant funding for stolen vehicle theft recovery, we pay overtime from 8 p.m. to midnight every day, and then also on the weekends. And so we have officers, CSOs, RTIC staff that'll take that overtime. So we try to staff 8 a.m. to midnight, 7 days a week. And then it is, as I like to say, it's not ideal, but all of our RTIC staff who want it have a full computer set up at their homes, including radios, so that if we get a call, we are on that call within a minute or two and working it in real time. And that has proven very successful in overnight. I use shootings because, an overnight homicide, if we can get on there in a minute or two and help them more quickly solve that homicide, then that pays off in spades. I say it's not ideal because nobody wants that at their house. Nobody wants to feel like they're always tethered to the agency. But for those of you on this call that are at agencies that are not, 500, 1,000 officer agencies and with full, a lot of people at your disposal, you kind of have to get a little bit creative. So if I wanted to, my operating budget this year is just at around the $600,000 level, not including salary. You can double that if you include the salary, and if I wanted to run 24 hours, another 6 to 800,000 for that. So you're looking at 1 million to 1.4 million in salary for a 24-hour operation, our size, along with 600 to 700,000 ongoing costs for your technology platforms.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to put this up on now because we have about 5 minutes left. I just want everyone to know these our contact information. I spoke with Jamie earlier. He's happy to answer any of your questions if we don't get to them today. You can reach Jamie there, and there's my contact information. And here's that website to the National Real-Time Crime Center Association if you haven't had a chance to check out that site as well. We have time for just a few more questions, and if we don't get to them, we'll be sure to email it, as I mentioned. But a question came in: do you have any tips or common challenges that happen that others can avoid, I guess, when creating a real-time crime center?
Yeah, we kind of have a small list of those that we tell people when they do site visits or when we're out presenting for the association. One, don't buy the first shiny thing you see. Do listen at every trade show, conference, vendor exhibit that you go to, but do your due diligence, vet those products out, and more specifically, vet them out in a like-minded, like-size agency as yours, so that you can see it in the real world functioning to ensure that it's what you need. I have gone into some products that ultimately didn't work for the agency, and no one ever wants to go back to their city manager, their city council, which in Elk Grove is super supportive of us, but nobody wants to go back to them and explain why it was that didn't work out. So avoid the shiny objects initially. At minimum, do your due diligence and vet those out. The shiny objects actually work in this field. That's the other thing that we see is that we haven't gotten to a point yet where there are 52 vendors for one particular product, and 40 of them don't actually work. So that's the bonus of this, is that you can go and do that. The biggest thing that we've seen is the philosophy of the department. So really it comes down to, what is the policing philosophy of your agency? Are you there to police quality of life? Are you there to police crime specifically? What drives the agency? That's going to help dictate to you what makes most sense initially, and what you'll get your biggest return on investment for any platform that you have. So if you have a ton of crime where you have pictures of people and you have no way to figure out who they are, facial recognition may be what you start with. So that's just an example of that. So vet and do your due diligence on what you buy. Reach out. There are enough real-time centers now that can answer your questions fairly, and give you kind of a good idea of what you do. And the last piece is always go with a technology partner that listens to the customer, takes feedback, and engineers the product and continues to engineer the product based on that customer feedback. Most of these technology partners in our space right now do that, and it's kind of refreshing. Coming out of a space where it was legacy equipment, it's nice to come into a space that partners are listening to what is needed and developing those.
Great. Thank you. We're getting comments in the chat saying, excellent, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. Excellent information. So I can tell that people are really valuing your expertise, Jamie, and giving them some tips that I think will be helpful. I just want to give you an opportunity, Jamie. We have a couple minutes left. Is there any topic or any question that we haven't asked you today that you would like to share before we wrap up?
I think that for me, real-time crime centers, real-time information centers, real-time operations centers, watch centers, whatever word you put into the middle of real-time and before center, it is a developing, emerging product. And so if you're tasked with building one, understand that it's probably going to be uncomfortable for you to go into a, a launch of a product and a build of a product that is really unfamiliar to you. Don't let that scare you away. And also don't let that allow you to dive into platforms just because one agency uses it, because one agency's had success. Uh, Open your eyes, open your minds, and be ready to change your paradigm a little bit going into this. And uh, be ready for a ride. It's when you jump on the tech train and you try to stay up with that, it's a hell of a ride. And so be ready for that, and always be a step ahead if you can be. And that's it's easy advice and hard to do. So good luck to anybody that is doing that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Well, we're out of time. So, on behalf of everyone at Higher Ground and Live 911, we want to thank you again for attending our Tech Talk. I'm always interested in hearing from our audience the topics you'd like discussed for future Tech Talks. So please feel free, like I said, to reach out to me at the address here. And also feel free to reach out to Jamie if you have additional questions that come up after you've had a moment to digest today's discussion. So again, thanks everyone. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.